I have witnessed many things in my 300 cycles as commander of the Victory Elite Guard. I have seen stars collapse. I have watched entire civilizations beg for mercy. I have personally executed 942 enemies of the Dominion with my ceremonial blade, and each one died knowing they faced a superior being. None of that prepared me for the human called Hadley. The day began with such promise. I stood in the weapons vault of the Crimson Arena, my 4 compound eyes scanning the glowing racks of plasma lances and molecular disruptors. The violet light cast dramatic shadows across my chitinous faceplate, and I allowed my segmented tail to sway with anticipation, its bioluminescent tip pulsing a satisfied blue. My chitin had shifted to a deep, confident purple, nearly black at the edges. I looked magnificent. I felt magnificent. Lieutenant Scrix scuttled up beside me, her smaller frame hunched, her yellow-tinged chitin betraying her perpetual anxiety. She clutched a data tablet in both hands, mandibles clicking nervously. "Commander Threx, the human delegation has arrived." "Excellent." I selected a plasma lance from the rack, testing its weight with one arm while adjusting my ceremonial shoulder guard with the other. The legendary Earth Warrior. I have studied their species extensively. Soft bodies, fragile bones. They compensate with cunning and ancient combat techniques passed down through generations. Scrix's antennae twitched. "Sir, there may be a small issue with—" "There are no issues, Lieutenant, only opportunities for glory." I strode past her toward the arena entrance, my tail leaving a faint glowing trail on the polished floor. "Today the galaxy will witness the Victory Dominion humble Earth's finest champion. Our victory will echo through." She brought livestock equipment. I stopped walking, turned slowly. "Pardon?" "The human. She arrived with several crates labeled agricultural supplies and has been asking where to set up her booth." Scrix's chitin flickered to a pale, worried green. "She seems to believe she's attending something called a farming expo." I stared at my lieutenant for a long moment. Then I laughed, my mandibles clacking in sharp rhythmic bursts that echoed off the vault walls. "Psychological warfare. Clever. The humans seek to unsettle us with apparent incompetence. Classic misdirection." She asked if we had any pamphlets about crop rotation. Brilliant misdirection. The Crimson Arena sprawled before me as I emerged onto the observation platform, and I paused to appreciate its terrible beauty. Red sand covered the fighting floor, imported from the dying world of Kethros at tremendous expense. Floating observation pods drifted overhead like mechanical clouds, packed with spectators from 43 different species. Plasma barriers shimmered at the arena's edges, ready to contain any violence that threatened to spill into the crowd. Grandmaster Corvan stood at the center of the champion's circle, his massive 9-foot frame draped in ceremonial robes. The 6 small eyes ringing his pale gray head pulsed with barely contained excitement, and his frilled neck membrane kept unfurling and retracting as he addressed the crowd through a hovering amplification drone. "Citizens of the Galactic Concordance," his voice boomed, the vertical slit of his mouth somehow producing resonant sound. "Today we witness a contest of ultimate significance. The Victory Dominion has challenged Earth to produce their greatest warrior for single combat." The crowd roared. I descended the stairs toward the arena floor, each step measured and imposing. My chitin gleamed under the stadium lights, shifting through shades of purple and black like oil on water. "And Earth has answered," Corvan continued, his eyes brightening with each word, "by sending their most decorated combat specialist." A door opened on the opposite side of the arena. The human who walked out was not what I expected. She was small, absurdly small, perhaps 5.5 feet, with a soft body wrapped in faded blue garments and a hat with a wide brim that shaded her face. She carried a metal case in one hand and appeared to be squinting at the crowd with an expression I could not immediately categorize. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice somehow carrying across the arena despite its complete lack of projection technique. "Is this Hall B? I'm looking for the Sustainable Agriculture panel." Corvan's neck frills went rigid, his 6 eyes all focused on her simultaneously. "You are Hadley of Earth, champion of your species?" "I'm Hadley from Earth, yeah." She set down her case and shielded her eyes with one hand, looking up at the floating observation pods. "That's a lot of people for a farming conference. Is this the opening ceremony?" The crowd had gone silent. I could feel the confusion radiating from thousands of beings. "This is the Crimson Arena," Corvan said slowly, his translucent patches of skin flushing with visible blue blood. "You have been summoned to face Commander Threx of the Victory Elite Guard in single combat." Hadley looked at me, then at Corvan, then at the red sand beneath her feet. "I think there's been a mistake," she said. I submitted a presentation on rotational grazing techniques. I strode toward her, my tail rigid with irritation, its tip flashing an aggressive red. Enough games, human. Your deception does not fool me. Draw your weapon. My what? Your weapon. I gestured to her case with one arm, while the other rested on the hilt of my plasma lance. The ancient Earth combat tool you have brought to face me. Hadley looked at the case. She looked at me. Her face did something strange, the soft skin crinkling around her eyes and mouth. This is a cattle prod. I am aware of its name. It's for moving cows. You're bovine creatures, yes. I have researched Earth weaponry extensively. I circled her slowly, my 4 compound eyes tracking her every micro-movement. The cattle prod, a device capable of delivering debilitating electrical charges. Used by your species' warrior caste to subdue enemies with efficiency and minimal damage to valuable assets. Hadley opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Cows aren't enemies, she said. They're cows. Psychological warfare, I announced to the crowd, my chitin flushing with confident purple. The human attempts to diminish her weapon's reputation, a transparent tactic. I drew my plasma lance, its blade humming with contained energy. Now, we fight. Corvan raised both his arms, neck frills fully extended. Let the combat begin. Hadley did not assume a fighting stance. She stood there holding her case, looking around the arena with an expression that I would later learn humans call complete bewilderment. I really think there's been a mix-up, she said. 3 of my elite guards stepped forward from the sidelines. Borax, Sketh, and Drin, the finest warriors under my command. Their chitin gleamed in aggressive reds and oranges as they surrounded the human, plasma daggers drawn. Perhaps a demonstration first, I said, sheathing my lance. To show the human the futility of resistance. Warriors, engage. Vorax lunged first, all 7 feet of him, both arms raised with his daggers poised for a devastating overhead strike. Hadley flinched. What happened next will haunt my dreams for the rest of my existence. Her flinch caused her to stumble backward. Her boot caught on her own case. She pitched sideways, arms pinwheeling, and somehow her hand closed around the cattle prod as she fell. The device activated. Vorax's momentum carried him directly into the prod's extended tip. The electrical discharge lit up his nervous system like a festival display. His mandibles clacked so fast they produced a buzzing hum. His chitin flashed through every color in the visible spectrum, a strobe effect that would later trigger seizures in 3 audience members. He dropped his daggers, performed what I can only describe as a vertical bounce, and collapsed face-first into the red sand. Oh my God! Hadley scrambled to her feet, the cattle prod still crackling in her grip. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. Sketh attacked from her left. She spun toward him, the prod swinging in a wild arc. It caught him directly in the throat. His eyes rolled back. His tail went rigid, the bioluminescent tip exploding in a shower of sparks. He flew backward into Drin, who had been charging from behind. The 2 warriors collided, became entangled, and the cattle prod somehow made contact with both of them simultaneously as Hadley tried to catch her balance. The triple electrical discharge created a feedback loop. All 3 warriors convulsed in a pile of twitching limbs and strobing chitin, their mandibles clacking out an involuntary rhythm that sounded disturbingly like music. The arena fell silent. Hadley stood in the center of the champion's circle, breathing heavily, holding a cattle prod that was now smoking slightly at the tip. Red sand clung to her faded blue garments. Her hat had fallen off, revealing disheveled hair. I just want to find Hall B, she said to no one in particular. Corvan's 6 eyes had expanded to twice their normal size. His neck frills quivered uncontrollably. The blue veins visible through his translucent skin were pulsing rapidly. 3 elite warriors, he announced, his voice cracking, defeated in 4 seconds. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, not in boos, but in the confused cacophony of thousands of beings trying to process something that violated their fundamental understanding of combat. I stared at the smoking pile of my finest soldiers. My chitin had shifted to a color I didn't recognize, something between white and a pale, sickly gray. My mandibles hung slack. Scrix appeared at my side, her tablet clutched to her chest. Sir, Vorax is requesting medical evacuation. He says his entire left side tastes purple. That's not possible. I'm just relaying the message, sir. I watched Hadley examine her cattle prod with evident confusion, turning it over in her hands as if seeing it for the first time. She pressed a button on its side and jumped when it sparked. Does this thing have different settings? She asked the unconscious warriors at her feet. They did not respond, My tail had curled around my leg, a defensive posture I hadn't assumed since childhood. I forced it straight, forced my chitin back to purple, forced my mandibles to stop trembling. "Impressive," I said, stepping into the champion's circle. My voice carried the confidence of 300 cycles of command. My hearts did not share that confidence. "You have defeated my subordinates with your primitive earth weapon, but I am Commander Threx. I have never been defeated in combat." Hadley looked up at me. She was so small, so soft, so utterly, incomprehensibly dangerous. "Listen," she said, "I really don't want to fight anyone. I have a panel at 2 about sustainable grazing practices, and I still need to set up my display booth. Do you know where I can find someone in charge of scheduling?" "I am in charge." "Great. So can you tell me where Hall B is?" I drew my plasma lance. The blade hummed with enough energy to cut through starship hulls. I assumed the first stance of victory combat, both arms positioned, tail raised for balance, all 4 eyes focused on my prey. "We fight," I said, "or you forfeit." Hadley sighed. It was a sound of such profound exhaustion, such complete exasperation, that I momentarily questioned whether I was the one causing her inconvenience. "Fine," she said, and raised her cattle prod. "But after this, someone is going to explain why a farming conference has a coliseum." "Begin!" Corvan shrieked, his frills fully erect, his eyes blazing. I charged. She sneezed. "I need to explain something about victory combat doctrine. We train from hatching. We study angles, momentum, the precise mathematics of violence. Every strike is calculated. Every movement serves a purpose. In 300 cycles, I have internalized these principles so deeply that combat flows through me like breath. None of our doctrine accounts for sneezing." The human's face contorted. Her eyes squeezed shut. Her entire body convulsed with a sound that I can only describe as a small, wet explosion from her facial region. The movement caused her arm to jerk upward, which caused the cattle prod to swing in an arc that physics should not have permitted. I was mid-lunge, plasma lance extended for a killing thrust, both arms committed to the attack, my tail providing perfect counterbalance. The cattle prod caught me directly under the chin. The electricity entered through my mandibles and exited through my tail tip in a single, continuous current. Every nerve in my body activated simultaneously. I experienced colors that my species cannot perceive. I heard my own chitin singing. My 4 compound eyes each saw a different version of reality, and all 4 versions involved me performing an involuntary backflip. I landed on my face in the red sand. "Oh no, are you okay?" Hadley's voice came from somewhere above me. "I'm so sorry, I have allergies. Is this sand imported? It smells weird." I could not respond because my mandibles were still vibrating at a frequency that produced a faint humming noise. My chitin had gone completely white, a color associated with either profound shock or imminent death. My tail twitched behind me in patterns that spelled out distress signals in Old Vecthari. The crowd had gone silent again. I pushed myself up with both arms, sand cascading from my chitinous faceplate. My vision slowly unified back into a single, coherent image. Hadley stood a few feet away, examining her cattle prod with what appeared to be genuine concern. "I think I broke it," she said, the lights flickering. I rose to my full 7-foot height. My chitin cycled through colors rapidly, unable to settle on an appropriate emotional display. My tail whipped behind me, its bioluminescent tip sputtering like a damaged engine. "That," I said, "was not a valid strike." I sneezed. "Combat does not permit sneezing." Hadley stared at me. "I don't think that's how allergies work." Grandmaster Corvan had pressed both his massive hands against his pale gray face, all 6 eyes peering through the gaps in his fingers. His neck frills had collapsed into a tight, stressed configuration. "The strike appears valid," he announced reluctantly, his vertical mouth barely moving. Commander Threx was touched by the weapon. "Touched," I repeated. "I was not merely touched, I was touched," Corvan said firmly. Combat continues. I adjusted my grip on my plasma lance. My hands were shaking slightly, a physiological response I had not experienced since my first battle as a juvenile. I forced them steady through sheer willpower. "Again," I growled. "Do we have to?" Hadley asked. "I really think if we could just talk to someone about the scheduling issue." I lunged. She stepped backward to avoid me, tripped over the still-twitching body of Vorax, windmilled both arms for balance, and accidentally pressed the activation button on her cattle prod 3 times in rapid succession. The device had settings. I learned this in the most educational way possible. The first setting was the standard electrical discharge, which caught my extended plasma lance and traveled up the conductive blade directly into my hands. The second setting appeared to be some kind of sonic pulse, which caused my compound eyes to temporarily lose coordination, each one tracking a different version of Hadley. The third setting released a burst of chemical spray that my translator identified as pepper-based deterrent. I discovered that Vecthari chitin provides no protection against pepper spray. My mandibles clamped shut involuntarily. My eyes began secreting emergency lubricant at an alarming rate. I dropped my plasma lance to claw at my face with both hands, staggering blindly across the arena while making sounds that later recordings would describe as distressing. "What is happening?" Hadley shouted. "Why does this thing have so many buttons?" I collided with something solid. It turned out to be Grandmaster Corvan, who had unwisely stepped forward to get a better view. My flailing arms caught his ceremonial robes. We both went down in a tangle of limbs, frills, and streaming eye lubricant. "Get off me!" Corvan bellowed, his 6 eyes blazing with indignation. "This is highly irregular. I cannot see. My face is burning. Your face is on my face." Hadley appeared above us, a blurry shape against the arena lights. "Should I call someone? Is there medical staff? I have some hand sanitizer in my bag if that helps." "Stay back!" I roared, finally disentangling myself from Corvan. I crawled away on all fours, my tail dragging uselessly behind me, my chitin flickering through colors like a malfunctioning display screen. "You are a menace. I'm a cattle rancher. You have defeated 6 Vecthari warriors in under 3 minutes. By accident." I reached the edge of the champion's circle and pulled myself upright using one of the plasma barrier pylons. My vision was slowly clearing, though everything still had a reddish tint. Corvan was being helped up by arena attendants, his pale gray skin flushed with visible blue blood, his frills twitching erratically. The crowd had begun making noise again, not cheering exactly, more like the collective sound of thousands of beings experiencing a shared mental breakdown. Lieutenant Scrix materialized at my side, her yellow-green chitin almost glowing with anxiety. She held out a cloth with both hands. "For your eyes, sir." I snatched it and scrubbed at my face. "What is that weapon?" "According to the human's documentation, it's a multifunction livestock management device." Scrix consulted her tablet. "Standard features include electrical stimulation, sonic guidance tones, and predator deterrent spray." "Predator deterrent, for keeping away creatures that might harm the livestock, sir." I stared at my lieutenant through burning, watering eyes. "She brought a device designed to incapacitate predators." "Yes, sir, to a combat arena." "It appears so, sir, and we mocked her for it." Scrix's mandibles clicked nervously. "In retrospect, sir, that may have been premature." Hadley had wandered over to check on Vorax, Sketh, and Drin, who remained in their pile of twitching limbs. She knelt beside them, prodding Vorax's shoulder gently. "Hey, are you guys okay? Can someone get them some water?" She looked up at the floating observation pods. "Does anyone have water or juice? My nephew gets like this when he's dehydrated." "Your nephew convulses and changes colors?" asked a voice from the crowd. "He has episodes." I wiped the last of the lubricant from my eyes and retrieved my plasma lance from where it had fallen. The weapon felt heavier than before, or perhaps my arms felt weaker. It was difficult to tell. "The combat is not finished," I announced, forcing authority into my voice. My chitin slowly shifted back toward purple, though pale patches remained. "I am Commander Threx. I have never been defeated." Hadley stood up, still holding the cattle prod. "Look, I really don't want to hurt anyone else. Can we call this a draw? I'll just go find my panel and we can pretend this never happened." "There are no draws in Vecthari combat." "That seems like a design flaw. It is an ancient tradition. Ancient traditions can still be flawed." She gestured at the recovery teams now dragging my elite warriors toward the medical bay. Case in point. Something in my chest made an unfamiliar sensation. Later, I would identify it as doubt. In that moment, it simply felt like indigestion. "One final exchange," I said. "Single strike each. Whoever remains standing claims victory." Hadley's soft face did the crinkling thing again. "And then I can go?" "Then you can go." "Fine." She raised the cattle prod, holding it in what was clearly an incorrect grip, her stance completely wrong, her entire posture suggesting someone who had never trained for combat a single day in her life. One strike. I assumed the 7th stance, the most defensive position in Vecthari combat. Both arms guarded my core, my tail provided perfect balance, all 4 eyes tracked the cattle prod. "Begin," Corvan called weakly from the sideline, where attendants were still adjusting his robes. I waited. In victory combat, the defender allows the attacker to commit first, then exploits the opening. It is a fundamental principle. It has never failed me. Hadley did not attack. She scratched her nose with her free hand. She looked up at the observation pods. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Should I go first?" she asked. "Yes." "Okay." She took a step forward, then stopped. "Sorry, what are the rules exactly? Do I just try to touch you with this? You attempt to strike me, I will dodge and counterattack. And you're really good at dodging?" "I am the finest warrior in the Victory Dominion." "Right," she nodded slowly. "So you'll definitely dodge, without question." "Great." She threw the cattle prod at my face. Not swung, not thrust, threw, like one might throw a stick for a pet to retrieve. The device tumbled end over end, sparking erratically, spinning in a completely unpredictable pattern. My compound eyes each tracked a different rotation, unable to synthesize the motion into a coherent trajectory. My trained reflexes, honed over 300 cycles, locked up entirely. The cattle prod hit me between the eyes. The electrical discharge activated on impact, but that was almost secondary to the simple physical trauma of having a metal object bounce off my faceplate at moderate velocity. I staggered backward, more surprised than hurt, and my heel caught on a groove in the arena floor. I fell, not dramatically, not spectacularly. I simply lost my balance and sat down hard on the red sand, my plasma lance clattering from my grip, my tail splayed out behind me, my chitin frozen in a pattern of pure white shock. The arena held its breath. "Oh, sorry." Hadley rushed forward. "Are you hurt? I didn't think it would actually hit you. You said you'd dodge." "I was supposed to dodge," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. "I always dodge." "Well, you didn't." "I know." Corvan stepped forward, his 6 eyes wide, his neck frills trembling. "Commander Threx is... Dunan. The human warrior is victorious." The crowd erupted. This time it was definitely cheering, though it had a hysterical quality that suggested mass confusion as much as celebration. Beings of 43 species screamed and stamped and waved appendages, not because they understood what had happened, but because something had happened, and noise seemed like the appropriate response. I sat in the red sand, staring at the cattle prod lying a few feet away. Its light had finally stopped flickering. It appeared to be dead. "Good fight," Hadley said, extending her hand toward me. I stared at it. "What is this gesture?" "You grab it, I help you up. It's a sportsmanship thing." "Sportsmanship?" "Yeah, like, no hard feelings. Good game, that kind of thing." I took her hand. It was soft and warm and distressingly fragile. She pulled, and I rose to my feet, and for a moment we stood there in the champion's circle while thousands of beings watched. "Where do I go now?" Hadley asked. "For the panel thing." "There is no panel." My voice was hollow. "This was always a combat arena." "Then why did I get an invitation to an agricultural conference?" "I do not know." A commotion near the arena entrance drew our attention. Scrix was hurrying toward us, her tablet clutched in both hands, her chitin a swirling pattern of yellow and orange. "Commander, there's been a development." "What now?" "The Galactic Concordance has interpreted your combat as a formal surrender of the Victory Dominion to Earth." She turned the tablet toward me, displaying dense blocks of legal text. "Under the Treaty of Contested Worlds, single combat between designated champions is binding. Earth's representative has defeated our representative. We new appear to have lost a war." I blinked all 4 eyes. There was no war. There is now? Was. We lost it. We cannot lose a war that did not exist. "The paperwork suggests otherwise, sir." Hadley had been examining the document over Scrix's shoulder. "Is this a peace treaty?" "I thought it was a feedback form." She pointed at a section near the bottom. "I signed this when I arrived. The tall guy with the neck thing said it was registration." Corvan made a choking sound from the sideline. "You signed the surrender document," I said slowly. "I thought I was signing up for workshop notifications." "You ended a war I didn't know about. On behalf of a species that did not know it was fighting." Hadley shrugged. "I guess we won then." I looked at the tablet. I looked at Hadley. I looked at my fallen warriors being loaded onto hover stretchers in the distance. I looked at my plasma lance lying useless in the sand. "I would like to see this agricultural panel," I said. "There isn't one. You just said." "There should be. You clearly have much to teach us." I straightened my posture, forced my chitin towards something approaching purple. "The Victory Dominion formally requests knowledge exchange regarding livestock management." Hadley's face did the crinkling thing again, but differently this time. Her mouth curved upward. "I can do a presentation," she said. "Do you have cows?" "We have creatures. Close enough." She picked up her cattle prod, examined it briefly, and tucked it under her arm. First lesson, don't mock the equipment. Cows don't care how fancy your technology is. They care about consistency and respect. This wisdom applies to combat. This wisdom applies to everything. I followed her out of the arena, stepping over the still sparking remains of my military career. Behind us, Corvan was explaining to the crowd that the exhibition had concluded and refreshments would be available in the main concourse. Scrix fell into step beside me, her tablet still displaying the peace treaty. Sir, what should I tell the Dominion Council? I watched Hadley walk ahead of us, her small, soft body moving with complete confidence through an alien world that had tried to kill her and failed spectacularly. Tell them, I said, that we are now experts in rotational grazing. Sir? And cancel all future honor duels with humans, all of them, every single one. My tail curled behind me, its bioluminescent tip finally settling into a steady, tired glow. Some species, Lieutenant, are not meant to be fought. They are meant to be observed from a safe distance, with appropriate respect for their agricultural equipment. Hadley turned back to look at us. You coming? I want to find somewhere to sit down, and maybe some food. Do you have anything that isn't red? I quickened my pace, the greatest warrior of the Victory Dominion hurrying to keep up with a cattle rancher from Earth. Behind us, in the Crimson Arena, Vorax finally stopped twitching. His chitin had settled on purple. He would later describe it as the most restful sleep of his life. The formal surrender ceremony took place 3 days later in the Grand Council chamber of the Victory Dominion. I stood at attention beside Hadley, my chitin a carefully neutral gray, my tail held rigid to prevent any involuntary emotional displays. Hadley wore the same faded blue garments. She had refused all offers of ceremonial robes, stating that she had packed light and everything else was in her checked luggage, which had apparently been sent to a different galaxy entirely. The Victory Dominion, Grandmaster Corvan intoned, his neck frills fully extended for the occasion, hereby acknowledges the supremacy of Earth in matters of single combat, territorial dispute, and, he consulted his notes with visible discomfort, livestock management. I still don't understand why I'm here, Hadley whispered to me. You conquered us. By accident. Conquest is conquest. The council chamber was packed with dignitaries from across the concordance. Representatives of 97 species had traveled considerable distances to witness the historic moment when a galactic superpower formally surrendered to a planet that most of them had never heard of. Earth's ambassador had arrived that morning, a tall human named Fletcher, who had spent the first hour of the ceremony demanding to know why his government was suddenly responsible for administering 16 star systems. We don't have the infrastructure for this, he kept saying. We barely have functioning public transit. Perhaps the cattle rancher can advise, suggested a Korvax diplomat, and everyone had laughed except Fletcher, who had gone very pale. Hadley signed the final document with the same casual disinterest she had shown when signing the first one. She used a pen she had brought from Earth, a cheap thing with a logo advertising veterinary supplies. There, she said, sliding the paper across the ceremonial table. Are we done? I've been wearing these clothes for 4 days and I really need to find my luggage. The ceremony is complete, Corvan confirmed. Earth now holds dominion over the former Victory territories. Great. Hadley stood, stretched, and looked around the chamber. Is there a lost and found somewhere? Or a customer service desk? I escorted her out of the chamber, past rows of stunned dignitaries, past Fletcher, who was now sitting with his head in his hands, past Scrix, who saluted us both with trembling arms. Commander Threx, Hadley said as we walked, what are you going to do now? I considered the question. My military career was over, my honor was in ruins. My species now answered to a planet whose representative had defeated our greatest warriors with veterinary equipment and allergies. I thought I might learn about cows, I said. Hadley's face did the crinkling thing, the upward curve. I can work with that, she said.